In the heart of Coventry, a group of young men was pulling off one of the most audacious car theft sprees the city had ever seen. Between 2022 and 2023, they targeted high-end SUVs, luxury cars, and motorcycles, striking homes, driveways, and streets with surgical precision. But this wasn't just about stealing vehicles. They flaunted their crimes online, mocked their victims, and even tried selling the stolen cars back.
You know how we have fun, boy.
Brazen, calculated, and dangerously confident, the gang left a community on edge and police scrambling for leads. Yet behind the scenes, a painstaking investigation was underway, one of the most extensive ever mounted by Coventry's local force. It would take months of digital forensics, surveillance, and coordination to bring the operation down. This is the story of the 5 men who believed they were untouchable, and the moment their criminal empire began to crack. At the core of Coventry's most prolific car theft ring were 5 young men who had turned stealing vehicles into a full-time operation. This wasn't a group of petty criminals acting on impulse. It was a structured crew with clearly defined roles moving through the city with coordination and purpose. Each member brought a specific skill set to the table, making them a formidable unit until their eventual downfall. Leading the charge was 20-year-old Jason O'Farrell. With no permanent address and a knack for staying out of sight, O'Farrell kept a low profile. He deliberately kept his digital footprint minimal and avoided patterns that might alert authorities. He didn't just help organize the thefts. He orchestrated the bigger picture, choosing when to strike and how to split responsibilities. His cautious habits bought him time but not immunity. Then came Cian O'Shea, just 19, living on Milverton Road. He was the gang's technician, the one who understood the modern vehicle better than most owners. O'Shea specialized in keyless entry systems, using signal amplifiers and other electronic gadgets to bypass car security with barely a scratch. It allowed the gang to steal high-value SUVs and motorbikes without resorting to forced entry until, of course, they needed to. Deacon Cumberbatch, also 19, from Riley Square, handled the strategic side of things. He picked the targets, scouted locations, and worked out routes for fast getaways. If an area had too many cameras or looked too risky, it was scrapped. Cumberbatch thought several steps ahead, ensuring the gang stayed one move in front of the police for as long as possible. The most physically assertive member was 23-year-old Tyrone Henn, based on Everton Road. Henn was at the front line during the more confrontational offences, including carjackings and break-ins. He was quick to act and not afraid to use intimidation to get results. In text messages later recovered, he voiced frustration about the financial rewards, complaining that his share of the profit didn't reflect the risks he was taking. Finally, the group's youngest member, a teenager whose name remains protected, was the eyes and ears on the ground. He kept a lookout during jobs, signaled the all clear, and helped transport stolen goods. His low profile allowed him to blend in, making him an ideal watchman. Together, the group functioned like a well-oiled machine. They committed dozens of thefts across Coventry and beyond, using technology, stolen equipment, and sheer nerve. But as they flaunted their crimes online and argued over the spoils, their digital fingerprints began to betray them. Leaving a trail investigators would eventually follow straight to their door. The group's method was deliberate, efficient, and designed to evade detection. Operating mainly under the cover of darkness, they targeted affluent neighborhoods, where high-end vehicles were parked in driveways or just outside homes. Their weapon of choice wasn't brute force, it was technology. Using specialist equipment, capable of intercepting or mimicking keyless entry systems, they could unlock and drive away luxury vehicles in under 2 minutes. No broken windows, no smashed ignitions, just a clean getaway that often left owners baffled as to how it even happened. But when stealth failed or the opportunity called for it, the gang weren't afraid to escalate. burglary became a regular part of their strategy. They broke into homes, sometimes while families were asleep inside, searching for car keys. These creeper burglaries were deeply unsettling, turning everyday houses into crime scenes. Worse still, they occasionally used direct force. There were reports of carjackings, where drivers were confronted and forced out of their own vehicles. The group weren't just stealing, they were prepared to intimidate, threaten, and use fear to get what they wanted. Their vehicle choices weren't random. They had a clear focus: fast, expensive, and in demand. Range Rovers, BMWs, Mercedes, and high-spec motorbikes were top of the list. Vehicles that could be stripped for parts, shipped abroad, or sold on quickly through criminal networks. The gang weren't acting on impulse. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they moved fast. One night, it was a quiet residential road in Coventry. The next, a housing estate on the outskirts of town. Each job was another payday. In total, police linked them to 47 individual offences committed between 2022 and 2023. But the real number may be much higher. What shocked detectives wasn't just how many vehicles were taken, it was the way the gang treated it all like a joke. They filmed themselves behind the wheel of stolen cars, shared videos of joyrides, and even posted photographs of their haul on social media. These weren't just criminals, they were performers, flaunting their crimes to an online audience. Perhaps most shameless of all were the messages some victims received. In a disturbing twist, certain members of the group contacted car owners directly, offering to return the stolen vehicles for a fee. This cruel tactic turned theft into extortion, forcing some to consider paying for what was already theirs. It was psychological warfare as much as criminal enterprise. The impact ran deeper than missing vehicles. Victims were left anxious, violated, and unsure if they'd been specifically watched or randomly chosen. The gang's actions didn't just drain bank accounts. They broke trust, shattered routines, and reminded an entire city that safety could be taken in seconds. As the number of vehicle thefts across Coventry continued to surge, the pattern of bold, calculated raids raised alarms within law enforcement. These weren't opportunistic crimes carried out in isolation. They were organized, relentless, and increasingly public. Recognizing the scale of the threat, West Midlands Police escalated their response. What began as a series of isolated reports quickly evolved into one of the most comprehensive investigations ever conducted by the Coventry local policing area. Detectives began with the digital evidence. The gang, confident and brash, had left a trail online, posting photos and videos of stolen vehicles across social media platforms. Far from hiding in the shadows, they flaunted their crimes, posing in front of high-end SUVs and filming joyrides. This behavior, while reckless, gave police a critical lead. Investigators began meticulously analyzing the footage, frame by frame, identifying background locations, license plates, and even clothing that matched other incidents. These videos, once intended as trophies, became damning evidence. Mobile phones seized during the investigation were even more revealing. Forensic teams recovered hundreds of encrypted messages exchanged between members of the group. These conversations not only revealed details of planned raids, but exposed the dynamics within the gang itself. In one message, 23-year-old Tyrone Henn vented his frustration about a previous job, complaining that a £2,000 payout split 5 ways left him with just £400, far less than he believed he deserved. The complaint hinted at growing divisions in the group, adding to the case that these weren't just criminals, but young men in over their heads. Using this digital trail, police began piecing together a timeline. Surveillance footage was matched with message timestamps. Locations discussed in texts were cross-referenced with reported thefts. Vehicle recovery sites were examined for fingerprints, DNA, and other forensic clues. Slowly but surely, a once elusive network began to take shape. The operation unfolded over many months, drawing in officers from specialist departments across the force. It was painstaking work, but the gang's own bravado worked against them. Their desire to broadcast success became the very thing that exposed them. What they thought was untouchable swagger turned into the breadcrumbs that led detectives right to their doors. With months of evidence compiled, phone messages, social media footage, CCTV and witness accounts, West Midlands Police were finally ready to strike. Throughout 2023 and into 2024, officers from the Coventry local policing area executed a series of carefully planned arrests. The aim was simple: move quickly, act decisively, and catch all 5 members of the gang before word could spread. Each suspect was taken in during coordinated raids, leaving no room for escape or warning. Jason O'Farrell, Kian O'Shea, and the unnamed 18-year-old were the first to face the weight of the prosecution's case. Just 2 days into their trial, all 3 chose to plead guilty, perhaps a recognition that the evidence stacked against them was too detailed, too specific, and too damning to refute. Videos, messages, and forensic links had tied them directly to stolen vehicles, car key burglaries, and more than one attempt to sell the stolen cars back to their original owners. Deacon Cumberbatch, who initially denied his involvement, changed his plea during proceedings, another sign that the walls were closing in. But it was Tyrone Henn who held out the longest. He pleaded not guilty and tried to contest the charges in full. On February 12, 2025, after reviewing the prosecution's case, a jury at Leamington Crown Court found him guilty. While the convictions alone were a major success, the investigation didn't stop there. 24 of the stolen vehicles were recovered, some hidden, others abandoned, and a few already in the process of being sold on. The recoveries helped bring a degree of closure to the victims and underscored just how far the gang's reach had spread. For Coventry residents and police alike, the arrests marked a turning point. Streets once haunted by brazen thefts and break-ins now felt safer. The gang that had once acted with impunity was finally behind bars, and the message was clear: no one is above the law. March 2025 brought the reckoning that many in Coventry had been waiting for. In a packed courtroom, the 5 members of the prolific vehicle theft gang, Jason O'Farrell, Tyrone Henn, Deacon Cumberbatch, Kian O'Shea, and Keegan Judge, stood before the judge to face justice. The atmosphere was tense, with victims, investigators, and reporters all gathered to witness the outcome of a case that had gripped the city for more than 2 years. Between them, the gang had been convicted of 47 separate offences, including car key burglaries, carjackings, and the selling on of stolen vehicles. The evidence was overwhelming. Videos flaunted on social media, hundreds of incriminating text messages, and direct contact with victims offering to sell their cars back. Jason O'Farrell, described by investigators as one of the central figures in the group, was sentenced to 10 years and 5 months in prison, with a 14-year driving ban imposed. Tyrone Henn, whose own messages revealed growing frustration over profits and leadership dynamics within the group, received 10 years and 6 months behind bars and a 12-year driving ban. Deacon Cumberbatch, who initially denied the charges but later changed his plea to guilty, was handed a sentence of 6 years and 9 months, alongside a 10-year driving ban. Kian O'Shea, the youngest of the core 4 and believed to have played a less dominant role, was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months with an 8-year driving ban. Keegan Judge, who could only be named after the lifting of a court restriction, received 4 years and 5 months in prison and a 9-year driving ban. These were not light punishments. They reflected not just the financial scale of the thefts, close to £1 million in total, but the psychological and emotional toll inflicted on the victims. Judge Simon Davis didn't mince his words, calling the gang prolific, calculated, and utterly without remorse. He emphasized how the group's actions had left families shaken, communities disrupted, and the wider public unnerved by the apparent ease with which vehicles were being taken. The sentences weren't just about punishment, they were about deterrence. They sent a clear and resounding message. In Coventry, organized car crime wouldn't be tolerated. And for the victims, these prison terms marked the beginning of closure. The gang's sentencing marked the end of a long investigation, but for their victims, the aftermath was only beginning. While the court delivered justice, the emotional and financial impact of the thefts continued to weigh heavily on those affected. Dozens of residents across Coventry were left dealing with the consequences. Vehicles gone overnight, homes violated in keyless burglaries, and violent carjackings that left some too afraid to return to daily routines. For many, the distress wasn't just about the lost property, it was the sense of vulnerability that lingered long after. The most shocking detail for many was the group's disturbing confidence. Their willingness to contact victims directly, offering to sell back the very cars they had stolen, added an unsettling layer to their crimes. What might have been a quiet recovery process turned into a cruel form of manipulation. It wasn't just theft, it was psychological warfare. These weren't faceless criminals operating in the dark. They flaunted their crimes online, shared photos of stolen vehicles, and joked among themselves about profits and payouts. Chief Superintendent Paul Drover, the senior officer leading the response, didn't hold back in his assessment. He described the five as among the most wanted offenders in Coventry and highlighted the scale of damage they caused, both mental and material. His words captured the wider frustration of a city that had watched shameless criminality play out in its own neighborhoods. In the wake of the case, public conversation turned toward car security in a rapidly evolving digital world. The gang had exploited keyless entry systems and electronic vulnerabilities that many owners didn't even know existed. Their methods exposed just how easily modern vehicles could be taken without a single broken window or raised alarm. The takedown may have brought justice, but the story also served as a wake-up call about the fragility of digital security and the human cost when it fails.